Hello, BookTube. Today, I'm going to be ranking another Victorian author's novels because throughout the last couple of weeks, I've ranked Dickens's novels, I've ranked Thomas Hardy's, and I've ranked George Eliot's, and now I'm going to be ranking Elizabeth Gaskell. I'm an Elizabeth Gaskell girly. I'm a defender. I adore her book. She's one of my favorite authors to ever walk the earth, and I just adore her so much. I first read my first Gaskell novel was North and South. I read it as a teen, and I was so shook by it. I was like, "Where have you been my whole life?" And I proceeded to read everything from her. I love her to death. The last time I read a Gaskell was last Victober last year, where I reread all of her novels in a month, and I just loved it so much. My ranking of Gaskell could literally change. It's literally changed this morning 3 different times. I'm not joking. The I'm gonna say top 3, 4 is brutal. It could literally change. I could finish filming and it would change. I'm dead serious. But in terms of what I'm going to include or what I'm not going to include, because there's some confusion on whether like novels like works like Cranford, a Dark Knight's Work, and My Lady Ludlow, are they novels? I'm personally gonna count them as novels because um just because there's more to talk about. Really, I get how they can be novellas, but personally I'm just gonna say they're novels. And so just to beef up the list a bit, but it was a brutal list to make, if I'm being really honest. Gaskell, when I was making this and I was rereading some, I was going through, I wasn't rereading the novels fully, but I was like going through, and I was thinking, is Gaskell taking over George Eliot as like my favorite Victorian author? And I haven't had the time to mentally process that thought yet, but it's close. There are some novels up in here that I think could take on Middlemarch is probably one of my favorites, let alone of the Victorian period. That's easy. But dead last, let's start the list actually. Dead last is My Lady Ludlow. This is Gaskell doing more of like a character study. It's about this older woman as she reflects during a time in her life when she was sent to live with a relative named Lady Ludlow. And it's a very interesting character study because there's no plot really. It pretty much the lady looking back, and she talks about Ludlow and her views on education and class. I'm looking at my notes, sorry. And like morals regarding like class society and difference. And that's really it. Really, it's fine. It's not my favorite Gaskell. I think because while there are interesting themes that Gaskell is trying to discuss, I feel like because it's in a story within a story, like within a story, I feel like it kind of gets bogged down by the narrative style, which is something I never say for Gaskell. And I think that is a big weakness. I think, yeah, it's just not my favorite. I do get what Gaskell was doing. I think what she's trying to explore, she kind of explored better in different novels that we'll get to, but for me, it had to be something at last, and that's My Lady Ludlow. And now, besides that, the 7 books I'm going to be talking about are some of my favorite Victorian books ever. I can't even tell you how much I love them. Number 7, and just because they're in a lower rank doesn't mean that they're bad. I'm just going to say that. Number 7 is A Dark Knight's Work. Both My Lady Ludlow and A Dark Knight's Work are, for some reason, not in print. And I don't know why Penguin doesn't do it, or Oxford, or Signet, or I don't know, Wordsworth even, or Collins. Like, no one reprints these 2 works, and I literally have no clue why. They do Gaskell's non-fictions, they do her short stories, her gothic tales, they do her novels. I'm like, why don't you do these 2 novels? But they're not really well remembered. I can see why they wouldn't take the hit on it. But anyway, A Dark Knight's Work. It's about a young lady named Eleanor who's raised by a single dad, and she falls in love with Ralph Colbert, who's like a gentleman, but he loves to spend his money and drink. And it's very much like Mary Barton, where you think everything's going okay, like, I get what's going on. Then all of a sudden, it's like, bam, one chapter completely changes everything, and it takes such a different, unexpected turn. And I'm not going to spoil it, but let's just say the ending is a killer. It is incredible. It is amazing. But it does very much come out of nowhere, and I really liked it. It's short and it gets to the point, and again, it's down lower on the list because it's kind of like death by comparison, if I'm being a bit honest. But I do really love it. What's next? Number 6, we have Sylvia's Lovers. Now, this is an underrated one by her. This is Gaskell doing very much an historical setting. This is set in the 1790s during the French Revolution, and it revolves around a small fishing town and a love triangle between Sylvia and her cousin slash friend Philip, and who is a tailor, and the other character is a sailor named Charles. And it's very much like Sylvia coming of age, and I think that's kind of a bit of the weakness, is that you don't see Sylvia. You don't get her perspective on a lot of things because Philip's the main it's Victorian. It's very much the side character is kind of like the main character, but the novel's named after Sylvia. But it's pretty much a love triangle as Sylvia comes of age. It's very twisty turny. I love the historical setting. I think that really makes it stand out as compared to other Gaskell novels. The town revolves around like fishing and like navy men, and I think Gaskell does a great job exploring the role of these type of men in society. And the characters are just so interesting and complex. Philip is one of Gaskell's, I think, most underrated characters. And even as something like education, which Philip can read, he can write, he's extremely well educated. Well, Sylvia doesn't really care for education. She just doesn't value it as much. And I think it's themes like that Gaskell really pulls off well. I will say the first half of this book is very slow. It takes a long time to build up. And I can see why people don't like this one as much, because it is a bit more... it's kind of gets overshadowed by what she done before and after. And I think it's a bit more of a dense Victorian book at the end of the day. And also, Gaskell does writes a lot of this in dialect. I have never been a dialect girly. I hate it. I struggle all the time, let alone reading it out loud. I struggle with dialect. And it just gets in the way of her writing for me, which is amazing. But yeah, I really like Sylvia's Lovers. It isn't my favorite, but I do really appreciate what it is. Next, number what I already forgot. Number 5, we have Ruth. Now, Ruth is an interesting one for me. A lot of people complain about this book being very dry and boring, and I kind of see it. But my God, this is one of those books I just randomly cry to. I don't know why. But Ruth is another character study. It's kind of like another coming of age. And we follow Ruth, who is a dressmaker, and she falls in love with a man and runs away and pretty much just leaves her life. Katie from Books and Things called this iconically back in the day. Ruth is Tess of the D'Urbervilles, but was written by someone who had hope, and I really completely agree with that. But except Ruth blows Tess of the D'Urbervilles out of the water. Why would you pick up Tess when you could have Ruth, in my opinion? It's just such a better novel. And again, Gaskell's talking about her main themes of class and disability representation through Mr. Benson, which is great. For me, the greatest thing about this book is Ruth herself. She is such a strong character, and the way she really discovers her morals and her sense of self-confidence, I think it's just such a treat to read. And Ruth is just a really underrated book for me. I don't know why you'd pick up any other Victorian coming-of-age novel. You can leave David Copperfield, you can leave those to the side. Just pick up Ruth, to be honest. And I really think that, to be honest. Next, number 4 is Cranford. Now, Cranford was a lot higher, but I think it kind of went down a bit because I don't know why. I think death by comparison. Cranford is about a town named Cranford, which is pretty much an upper class town, and it's made up of women as very much like a woman-centered community. And it's pretty much involves Mary, who's a young woman who's in Cranford, and she's staying with some friends, and she observes all of these older women and just this sense of community. It isn't a plot-heavy book at all. It's very much a character study and a critique novel of the time. The lives explored of these women and how they got into wealth and just the experiences that they share are so amazing. They're so incredibly done. It's very much vignettes in terms of a style. Very, you could almost say pistolary, but it's not really. And the character studies are just some of Gaskell's best. This blows so many authors out the water for me. I love how it's just so touching. It explores, humankind and just bonds of friendship and just I just can't even. It's so delightful. You will see people hate on Cranford because it's not as like a lot of academic people don't like Gaskell, and I don't get it personally, but Cranford could be easily my top three, but it got blown out the water, and that's okay. So number three, we're in my top three favorite Gaskell novels, and it could change. This could literally change right now, but we're not. Number three is Wives and Daughters. Now, this honestly is one of my favorite Victorian novels ever. It is up there with Our Mutual Friend. It is up there with Middlemarch. It's up there with Return of a Native, I guess. This is Gaskell's final and unfinished novel, and it's not like a Mystery of Edwin Drood where she was halfway done. No, she was literally like 5 pages away from finishing. We have the notes and or what she was going to write down, whatever. But this book is amazing. It follows a young girl named Molly whose mum's died, and she lives with her very supportive dad who was a doctor. And during this time as she grows up, when she's like 17, a doctor apprentice who's living with them develops a crush on Molly and sends her a love letter. And the dad finds out about this, and he sends Molly away to live with some family friends, the Hamlin family, to kind of stop this relationship because he doesn't want Molly to grow up yet. And the Hamlin family have two sons, Osborne and Roger, which is just iconically amazing. And during this time, the dad decides to remarry, hoping that his new wife will help Molly become a woman, in metaphorically like that. And Gaskell is very much talking about class divide and also class anxiety throughout every one of his characters. Molly is very much middle class and working class, while the Hamlin family are more upper class and rich. Molly's stepmom was a former governess, and so she spent a lot of time working in richer families, but she herself isn't a part of that society, so she's always trying to she's always desires to be a part of that class. And what really makes Wives and Daughters such an amazing novel is the family dynamics are hands down incredible. The relationship between Molly and her stepsister is just incredible. Her relationships with the two Hamlin brothers are just incredible. Gaskell again talked about grief and death, and Molly herself, watching her grow again, she's just an incredible heroine. And yeah, Wives and Daughters, it's the one I read last because I've heard so much about it, but my god, it is genuinely one of my favorite books ever. It is one of those ones where if, God forbid, touch wood, if my house was burning down, I would run to take my Gaskell. I would probably run and take Georgia Heyer first, but Gaskell, oh, I need her. And I love that. So next we have, and now this is very interesting because number two we have North and South. And now this is where I'm going to drop some controversial opinions. I've heard people say compare this book to Pride and Prejudice, and that North and South is like the industrialized Pride and Prejudice. For me, this North and South completely blows Pride and Prejudice out of the water. I don't know why you would pick Pride and Prejudice over North and South. If I know that's controversial, and I'm a Jane Austen girly, but North and South is just so much more interesting. I love the dynamics. It's honestly one of the greatest romance novels I've ever read. It is up there. Margaret and John Thornton are incredible. North and South pretty much follows Margaret Hale and her family as she moves from like a rural area to more of a very much industrialized town, Milton. and she gets a lot of cultural shocks. Like she sees a lot of the strikes going on and a lot of the clashes between the owners, like mill owners and all that, and also just everyday working class people. And during this time, um, she kind of meets John Thornton, and they don't get along really well because of the way he treats his workers. But they once they start to getting know they know once they start to know each other, it just takes off. And the entire novel, honestly, is like conflict after conflict, battle after battle. It is so interesting and so layered in a way I don't think a lot of other novels that like other Gaskell novels even. I think not only is it like conflict in terms of settings, workers versus employers, new money versus old money, because John is very much of new money. He's the owner of a cotton mill, and he's made a lot of money off that. So he doesn't really fit into like the old class money of inheritance and all that. Um, Also, it talks about a lot about the dangers of working in like a cotton mill and like um, what it takes to run it, because a lot of the novels also John's perspective as well. And so getting those two different dynamics and perspectives is just so well, it's so well done, and I love it so much. Gaskell talks about death as well, and it's grief, and it's incredible. I don't know what I mean to say. Um, and it's just so amazing. Um, and it's honestly, I would honestly say it's, oh my god, it's up there with Middlemarch. It's one of my favorite Victorian books. It could maybe even take Middlemarch. It's such a gem of a novel. If you have not read North and South, please do. It's incredible. And so that's my number two. And number one, as much as I love, love North and South, my personal favorite, like I think objectively, North and South is Gaskell's best novel. It's her best writing. It's just incredible. But for me, I've always loved Mary Barton, her debut, and it's so underrated. I don't even know how to say it. It's like North and South, but for me, it's more, I don't want to say grounded, but for me it just works. It does something to me. I can't explain it. It's one of her best romances again. It's incredible. What I think Gaskell really does well is her minor characters are stunning. They never fail. And it's, yeah, Mary Barton I think is one of the great debut novels ever. It's incredible. It blows what Desperate Remedies out of the water. But Mary Barton, it follows Mary Barton, who's a young woman, and she's torn between two men, in terms of she wants a better life. She she can either marry the mill owner's son Harry Carson, and oh my god, what am I saying? Yeah, marrying the wealthy son, and she also has a love for Jem Wilson. And let's just say there's tensions and all that goes on, and through strikes and class bitterness and genuine poverty, there's a I don't. It's a killing. Let's just say it's a killer plot. And Jem is arrested for a crime, and Mary must really sit in that situation and decide what she's gonna do and who she's gonna pick to stick with, as she like kind of really um, realizes the situation in terms of class and the conflict and that she's in. I know that's not the best explanation. I struggle with that, but Mary Barton just it scratches an itch for me. It's just incredible, and it is my number. It's a personal favorite, number one. And yeah, that is my ranking of Gaskell's novels. So number 8 was My Lady Ludlow, 7 A Dark Day's Night, 6 is Sylvia's Lovers, 5 is Ruth, 4 is Cranford, 3 is Wives and Daughters, 2 is North and South, and number 1 is Mary Barton. So yeah, let me know what you think of my ranking in the comments. What do you think of Gaskell? How would you rank her novels? And yeah, this was such a fun list to do. I really am keen to do a Gaskell, but like I don't have time. But anyway, thank you so much for watching BookTube, and I will see you next time.